Hello, everybody. Now I'm going to cover the results of this study. So, in here, first of all, we are going to start with the frequency distributions. So, in here is about the proportion of respondents agreeing or strongly agreeing in the seriousness or of the frequency statements. So in here we had 41 statements where our teachers, in-service and pre-service teachers, had to agree on or disagree in how unethical or ethical they were. So in here we had the 7 most common answers. So in here we have number 1, that is gossips to other teachers about a student, and we had 66.4%. And number 2, use lesson plans from World Wide Web instead of creating original lessons. So 97.9% of our teachers agreed on that action being unethical. However, pretty common. Number 3 is knowingly allows a student to violate school rules in his or her classroom. So even though that is unethical, it still happens, and 41.3% of our teachers believed this action being unethical. Number 4 is makes a derogative comment about a colleague to a teacher, 41.3%. Number 5 would be use materials developed by a colleague without his or her permission, and for that we have 40.5%. And number 6 is spends considerable class time engaged in activities irrelevant to the subject area, and that we have 33.9% of our teachers. Those were like the proportion, and where we can see those are like the most common ones. And in here we are going to talk about the unethical behaviors, but that are not serious violations. And we have these main 4 statements, and number 1 being use lesson plans from World Wide Web instead of creating original. So for most teachers this is, and for a lot of teachers this is unethical. However, here we see of 18.6%, and we have here that is a not very serious violation. Then we have hires students to do chores, and in here with a 37.4%. Then for some teachers, they believe this, or hiring students is not a serious violation of the ethical code of teachers or education as such. Then we have number 3 as uses technology that hasn't been approved by the school administration, with 43%, as you see it here. And number 4, behaves unprofessionally outside of work. So even though teachers believe out of your workplace we should still behave professionally, not doing so would not be a serious violation, with a 47.5%. Additionally, these studies shows now the contrast of the 7 statements that are the most serious unethical behaviors from the list of 41 statements or behaviors they proposed for the survey. So number 1, with a 95.2%, we have make a sexually provocative statement to a student. So even though our results show 95.2%, it should be higher if you if I may, this action being seriously unethical. However, we have here a high number. Now, number two is engage in a romantic relationship with a student. And then we have 94.6% of our teachers believe this is a serious and ethical behavior, as you can see it here. Then we have number three, that is shares confidential information about student with a different student. And we have here, keeping the same number, 94.6% of our teachers believing this is a serious and ethical behavior, as well as giving students high grades in return for favors, being that also a serious and ethical behavior. However, we see that, I don't know if that happened to you, like in English days or activities like that, where teachers were, hey, do this for me and I'll give you a higher grade for this or determined assignment. Then we have number five, that is allows a students to engage in romantic behaviors in the classroom, being also a serious and ethical behavior with 93.3% of our teachers agreeing on that. Then we have number six, that is make a derogative comment about a colleague to a student. So we have here the contrast, derogatory comment about a colleague, but to a teacher, but in here is about a colleague, about a teacher to a student, being that a very serious and ethical behavior. And finally, we have Twitter and Facebook, and it's about posting opinions on Facebook or Twitter about students, with 92.4% of our teachers agreeing that being a serious and ethical behavior. As you can see it here, the is actually these seven got high percentages. No, like without taking into consideration if it was a pre-service or in-service teacher, the person who answered the survey. Then we have here, out of the 41 statements and situations that were posted and were there in the survey, this research study allowed us to classify them into four different factors. Factor number one being the personal harm factor, that involves inappropriate close relationships with a student or situations where the student might be in danger physically or emotionally. So in here we have all the sexual connotation comments that teachers can make to students, or these close relationships where teachers and students don't know where to cross the line. Those are the or when we allow other actions where students feel their personal their well-being is being affected. Number two is unprofessional or careless factor, where teachers are going to the classroom to teach something they are not sure about, or when they pick up any assignment and they give it back, they return it without any grades. So that is unprofessional or careless factor. Then we have public and private boundaries. In here being the one where most female teachers agreed on being a serious inconvenience, where we need to talk about the social media, Facebook and Twitter opinions, or Not only that, but also the part from taking lesson plans for the classes instead of creating original new and brand new lesson plans. And finally, we have great inflation factor. In here, not only we are talking about the giving grades for favors, but also the need of changing the grade because of parents, coordination, the principal of the school. And this study also showed that teachers from high school believe public and private boundaries are not such a big deal. So for them, for high school teachers, this aspect, public and private boundaries, is actually less serious than what elementary teachers might think about or might consider. So in here, and finally, this research shows that the teacher's rating on these aspects does not depend on teaching experience. It's more about personal perceptions. And those were the results for this research study. We are going to cover the discussion part with Santi.